You're listening to Gaming Buzz, your source for information and entertaining discussions about video games for video game enthusiasts. With your hosts, Jacob, Darien, and Christian, all huge nerds who can never have too many games. Now, let's get this started.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Gaming Buzz. My name is Darien and I'm here with Christian.
Hello!
Today you may notice Jacob is nowhere to be heard. I'm just filling in for him and he'll be back in the next episode. Since we don't have Jacob here in this episode, we do have a guest to fill his spot. Our guest is Dalton Ibuwaka.
Hola.
You may have heard his voice in another podcast called TCG Buzz, which is our sister podcast on the Newsmakers Podcast Network.
Whoa, I feel like it's more of a brother podcast, if you know what I mean, player.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, no, I'm here, finally on an episode of Gaming Buzz. I was wondering what was taking you guys so long to get this topic rolling. Let's see if we can get this nicely done and maybe keep Jacob off forever.
Man, I love this guy's plan already. Oh, wait.
So, on the topic of topics, today we're talking about sports games.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we asked Dalton to be on the show today is because he knows his stuff when it comes to sports games.
Well, I know a little bit more than you, and I also play sports, and I'm a little bit more active, and yeah.
Man, I play sports too.
Christian, sitting down on your couch is not a sport.
I wish it was.
And Dalton, you mentioned you played some sports now. Which ones do you play?
Currently, or that I have played?
Everything.
Everything. Well, I've played football, I've played tennis, I've played soccer, I've played baseball, I've wrestled, I've played basketball. Let's see, what else am I missing? I'm missing something. I'll leave it off at that for right now, but I feel like there's more.
So you like playing with balls?
But not the same kind of balls as you, Christian.
Baseball?
Christian,
Yes.
you know how many hates you're going to get. You're going to get roasted in the comment section down below. Or anywhere, matter of fact. They're going to make a whole blog session on Roast Christian.
Okay.
From Gaming Buzz. And it's just like, this man likes talking about balls when it comes to sports.
All right, let's get back on topic. So, when it comes to sports games, what classifies it as a sports game? I'll start first with a definition that I would like to give. It'd be an activity that you can do in real life without a motor involved.
Well, in the video game concept, yes, because even though NASCAR is a real sport, I guess, in the real world.
It is a motor sport.
Yes. And you have your BMX and so forth, which can kind of be looped into sports as well. But besides that, I'm pretty sure you got it basically nailed down. It's typically more of your sports like football, baseball, soccer, handball, lacrosse. You got hockey in there too. You got a little bit of everything. They try to keep them separate because there are a lot of racing games out there and they kind of have their own genre. And then you have sport games, I guess.
Yeah. So when it comes to sports games and talking about them, the best place to start is our first experiences with this genre. And I'll start with myself saying mine was kind of a generic football title, and it didn't have a very good first impression for me, but it was a game called Arena Football Road to Glory, which was published by EA, and I believe it was developed by the same team that done all of the Madden games during the early 2000s, and it was a PS2 game. I mean, it's okay, but I definitely would not recommend it.
Interesting. Arena football is a whole different beast compared to normal football. There's a lot of the same mechanics and so forth, but there's a lot more walls involved, I can say.
It is quite differently paced and a lot more action-oriented.
I wouldn't say action-oriented. It's just because I've also watched some arena football games, and they have the guy who runs towards the line and so forth, and it's just trying to get the timing right and all this. There's a lot of different rules that they have that the football leagues don't have, and vice versa, and just it's a whole new beast.
Yeah, I definitely like arena football for the fact that it's a smaller field.
Yeah.
It keeps a lot of the plays a little bit shorter.
This is true, but then you don't get the same excitement, in my honest opinion, when you go to a real football game, say for the NFL or NCAA, where you have this breakout play maybe from the 10-yard line and all of a sudden they're down in the end zone for a 90-yard run or a 90-yard pass or a nice kickoff return for a touchdown. But then again, it's really whole new beast. That's what you got to say. It's a whole new beast.
Yeah, it's definitely got its quirks. And Christian, I'd like to ask, what was your first experience with the sports genre?
My first experience was Nintendo World Cup on the NES. And it's a pretty cool soccer game, and you pretty much manage your team to, it's cartoony, but in 8-bit style. So I rather have people play than I explain it because it's easier that way. But
Okay. Would you say it's more of a GM standpoint, or were you more of a coaching standpoint?
You play as the characters and you just tell them what to do, and you just and they move accordingly to what you do.
So it's kind of like a old version of FIFA?
No.
Okay.
Not even close. It's hard to explain because...
So by GM, I mean like you manage the whole club. You're basically kind of like the main person who makes all the decisions, financial, who you pick up, so forth. Do you do any of that, or you?
No. Well, you're playing as the characters in the football, but you just tell them what to do while you're playing.
I mean players,
yeah,
not characters. So you're the football players and not like the coach or the GM, correct?
Well, I guess your A and B buttons say what to do to them. So that's it.
Good talk.
Okay, we'll just leave it to play it. And Dalton, lastly but not least, what was your first experience with the genre?
Honestly, it is a little bit fuzzy. I'm not sure if it was a old school Madden game or if it was an NBA Streets game, but I have better memories of NBA Streets just because it was just so much fun to play. If anyone has ever played NBA Streets, I believe there were 3 volumes of it. The first one I believe I played was Volume 2, and the gameplay was basically crazy handles, crazy shots, just a bunch of different things and game breakers to shake up the game to basically win it all. It's a really nice game. I loved it. I'm kind of sad they don't have it going any further, but that's for another topic.
Yeah, I really loved the entire Street series of games that were put out.
Mm-hmm.
They were really, really unique in the idea that it just takes street rules and makes them a lot more flashier too.
Exactly. And that's why I think they should just kind of do a little reboot for them. Just reboot them, start them over if you have to, or just be like, oh, you know what? We're going to have Volume 4 now. Boom. Just.
And thinking with the current technology we have, oh my God, the art style and all that stuff could be brought so much forward.
Oh, it'd be so delicious.
All right. So it sounds like we had quite fond memories of our first games, except me. So here we go into what we do like about them. And I'll start with myself saying that what I like about sports games is that I don't have to invest money on usually expensive sports equipment or have to worry about getting hurt. So that's one thing that I like about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do like playing sports when I get the chance, but I just like the idea of just being able to pop in a disc and kind of play a version of it. It's not the same, I know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then it really depends on how dedicated you become into it, because with the newer Madden games out there, you have your Madden Ultimate Team out there. Same thing with FIFA and so forth. And I believe 2K has that as well. I can't remember. Where you actually do have to invest money into it to try to buy packs and so forth and all that. But there's also the cost. There's many YouTube videos out there to try to get you the cost-efficient teams where you're just doing challenges and so forth. But we all kind of knew it was coming, that there was going to be some way to make money with MUT and FIFAs and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't really played that many recent sports games because I'm kind of stuck in that. I was always stuck on playing sports games on my PlayStation 2, so that's kind of where the standpoint I'm coming from.
Well, you can always bring it back,
Yeah.
especially with Streets out there, that basically that being its main system, that's all right.
It's a good series to collect. And since you're talking about the kind of the different game mechanics and stuff in the game, so Dalton, what do you like about them?
Throughout the years I'm going to use Madden as the main example and its whole evolution through where it is now, how the gameplay and game flow have changed from being super glitchy and like kind of all over the place to actually really redefined and nice crisp, almost as if everything's going exactly when you're hitting the buttons and so forth. Then again, you still have, if you go online to play people online, you still have the tendency to have lag, which you only really saw with shooting games, but now that you're experiencing with sports games, and
it's kind of an across the board issue.
Exactly, it's across the board issue, but it's still really fun to play, especially say you used to play football when you were younger, but then you just kind of grew out of it yourself, but then you're like, oh, they have a video game for this. I can still enjoy what I liked about it without actually having to try to join the team and so forth.
Yeah, instead of breaking a sweat and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'd like to bring up a point that you talked about, like the less glitchiness and kind of the less whatever. I'd like to go on top of that also, that now with this new technology that we have nowadays, I definitely think that the physics are a lot cleaner if the game is programmed right, because there's quite a few glitchy sports titles out there nowadays, especially during the beginning of the PlayStation. When I've noticed it a lot on the PlayStation 4 during the early time, because a lot of these games were made for the system, just put on the other ones.
Which then again just really has to deal with more years to come, and then eventually those being cleaned up, less sloppy and so forth. Because just like with Madden, like it's a very simple thing. Like after the play's been blown dead, everybody's kind of like dead noodles around the around the ball. If they were in on the tackle, it's just kind of like wet noodles. It's like, okay, this is fun, but eventually they'll get to the programming that they need to be to where it looks like a real NFL game or real NCAA game. It really just depends on the technology in the next decade or so.
Yeah, and whoever develops it and actually puts in the time to actually program it and get familiar with the technology that we have.
And the one thing I've noticed with the technology we have is, especially with EA, their main focus was trying to get the graphics a lot cleaner, especially like NBA Live, which is their basketball title that they have. Their graphics are way better than 2K's, but 2K beats them out with their new story mode that they have with 2K16 and with their gameplay. So it's just all so forth. So, Christian, what do you like about the sports genre?
Just having local multiplayer, to be honest. I like having friends over to play video games, especially sports ones, actually, because, it's more exciting that way. Everybody's playing, like, I guess, an NBA or NFL Game Day 98 or whatever.
Whoa.
We're going
Jesus.
way back to the past.
That's way back there.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of the older titles are way better for the local co-op, or not local co-op. I think a lot of the older titles are actually quite good at doing the couch multiplayer, just on how they're always set up in that mindset back then.
Yes, this is true, but the newer ones, they can also do it, but it's more of the fact of controller cost. Like, that's what I feel is like the big problem with local gameplay. It's just for the PlayStation 3, the controllers are still super expensive. It's like, whoa, chill.
Yeah, if you have a friend coming over, be like, you're bringing your own controller, buddy.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're screwed.
Yeah, and I see the thing with the local multiplayer. I usually don't like playing sports games by myself.
Oh, yes.
And sports are usually a very social event and kind of a social thing to talk about. So you usually hear people not just sitting in their own little room saying, hey, here's a sport like football. I'm just going to keep it all to myself. No, you're going to go and talk about it with a bunch of buddies.
Exactly. And hence, when online was introduced, it actually evolved the game even further. Sure, you can still invite your friends over and play games, but say you have that one friend that lives all the way out in New York, or you have a friend out in Australia, it brings you guys even closer together still, even though you're not in the same room.
Not to be pessimistic about what we just talked about, but what do we hate about sports games?
Oh, you're one of those guys, huh? You're one of those guys.
I'll start off by saying I could just do the sport in real life, and that usually a sports game isn't that interesting of a video game scenario for me to sit down and want to play it for an hour.
There's a lot of people that will probably comment down below, like giving you a bunch of heat about this, roasting you on it, but I'm going to try to give them their point of view to you, so it will be a little bit less for you that you have to read in the comment section below. There's things, obviously, that you can't always recreate that you can see for an NFL game, like the Odell Beckham Jr. catch when he was a rookie. You cannot really recreate that situation in Madden. But there's also things that you can do in Madden that you can't actually do in real life. Like, one example is catching a ball, basically falling one way, reaching your arm the other way, with the defender basically right there in between your shoulder, basically would dislocate your shoulder while you're going for the catch. That you can make in Madden, but you can't if you would to try to do that in real life, especially with me with my left shoulder, because my left shoulder is a little bit on the crappier side and likes to pop out, would just pop out and just be like, okay, that was fun. But then again, I still kind of see what you're saying. Like, you can do it in real life if you want to, but then again, I feel like sports games were kind of invented for the people who couldn't keep going on in that, like, they couldn't make the pros or something like that. Like, it gives them something to do.
Yeah, and talking about people with, like, disabilities that make it so they can't play.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as a nice point, too.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian, what do you not like about sports games?
Well, to be honest, I usually get bored easily because they're not like platformers or shooters or something like that. It's just like, meh.
So it's kind of the same thing that I kind of have a feeling for, kind of.
Well, honestly, I feel, Christian, you're a Super Mario type guy. You just run through those like nobody's business. You're more like a straight platform type of guy. It's trying to try out a whole new lifestyle, trying to get you into sports, which is understandable. It's basically kind of what you grew up with, and it's trying to cross over to something that you're not quite used to.
Or interests, too.
That too.
And, another thing is that sometimes they get very repetitive.
Like, what do you mean by repetitive?
You kind of do the same thing again and again. You do that, even though you do it in real life, the same things, but, it's more fun in real life to do it than in video game, because it's like, I don't know,
Well, I'm gonna do the same thing with it, like I did with Darien when he brought up his topic, is trying to lower those blasts in the comment section for you that you have to read. Sure, it's repetitive going from year to year, but that's kind of how sport games have to be, because they're basically the same with just very minor improvements and then updates to the rosters and so forth, especially with drafts happening and so forth. It's kind of what they have to do. So it's basically going to be the same gameplay, I guess, almost, but it's going to be slightly enhanced for you.
So then the only problem would be is if they're going to release another game, it's pretty much going to be the same game all over again, but with different players.
I see it as they release basically the same type of game, but they do engine revisions and probably like code cleanup so they didn't do in the previous game.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, by the end of the generation, they make these really well-polished versions of these games.
Exactly. It's like, I remember watching one YouTuber and how he completely hated 2K16, basically called it 2K15-2, because that's basically what it was, except for the whole. But with 2K16, it introduced a really nice story mode, which I kind of want Madden to do, have a story mode like that, which it would be really nice because you basically play like a game or two in high school, a game or two in college, and you kind of pick what high school you go to, what college you go to, and then basically go through your draft and see where you get drafted at. which brings a lot more interest, I guess, to the sports genre in themselves, because beforehand it was basically you created your player, you threw them on a team, and then it was just, all right, go for it. You never really had the true experience of trying to make the work to it. So that's one thing that I really liked about 2K16.
So it definitely makes it more personal.
Mm-hmm.
And going off of that, or not going off of that, and Dalton, what do you not like about sports games?
Well, I'm not going to lie, I had a hard time trying to figure that out, especially since sports games are like the main genre that I play, and next in line would be RPGs. The only thing I could really say is based off of Streets and not being more games being made, because Streets was really fun. I'm pretty sure anyone, even you, Christian, could get into it. You would have a lot of fun just doing all these wacky little things in it and just being like, well, damn, that was an interesting game. You never know what's going to happen and so forth. So I guess that's my only real thing that I have to say about that. Christian?
I do like sports games that actually mix up the formula, like you just said, like Streets. I like cartoony sports games a lot. It's because I kind of like the art style, depending on how it's done, actually.
Okay.
But sports games like NBA Jam, like on the PlayStation 3,
that's a good game too.
Which we'll probably be talking about in a minute or two. But they mix it up, and it's fun. It's funny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If only Jacob were here for Clinton.
He's horrible on this topic, let's be honest.
I know.
He's a blind white guy. It doesn't mix well.
So with that note, we're going to wrap up this episode for now.
So on that note, we'll be wrapping up this episode here, but make sure to stay tuned for another episode on the sports genre where we talk about our favorite and most likely our least favorite games.
So on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode, but stay tuned for another episode where we're going to go over the same sports genre, but instead we're going to be talking about our favorite games from this and our least favorite games. And with that, I would also like to thank Dalton for being on this episode.
It's been a pleasure, boys.
Dalton will be joining us in our next episode about sports games, since he does know quite a lot about sports.
Oh, I feel so honored.
Oh, thank God.
And to make sure that you don't miss the next episode, make sure to subscribe to Gaming Buzz. Visit our sponsors who make this podcast possible by visiting gamingbuzz.com/sponsors. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter, or submit a show review. You can do this by visiting gamingbuzz.com/18. Gaming Buzz is a proud member of the Newsmakers Podcast Network, an ever-growing network of podcasts covering many business and entertainment topics. Please check them out at npcn.tv. And as always, I'm Darien.
I'm Christian.
And I'm the token black guy.
Thanks for listening to Gaming Buzz. New episodes can be found on gamingbuzz.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.